Top 5 things Baylor needs to reboot their season after that 43-40 loss last night and 2 losses in a row. This is a team that's probably a little bit reeling this morning as they came in and rewatched what happened last night and saw themselves shoot themselves in the foot several times last night over and over and over again. We've discussed it at length, but I thought we'd put a bow on it here at the end of the show. I haven't done a Baylor-specific top 5 in a very, very long time, so shows you how that was last night, and maybe time to hit, maybe not the panic button, but the reset button here in Waco. Number 5, coverage, and I mean pass coverage, kick coverage, any kind of coverage they have not been good at, and especially the last 2 weeks. Kick coverage has damaged them, set up West Virginia very well for what turned out to be the game-winning drive, although I'm pretty sure the way they were running the ball, they could have gotten it at the 1, and West Virginia would have maybe scored then as well, but the coverage has not been good, guys.
No, I agree. I mean, the kick return by Oklahoma State was a dagger almost to start the second half, although Baylor dug themselves out of that hole. Then it was the other kick return out to the 50. And I keep saying this, even though it doesn't seem like much, but allowing West Virginia to return the kickoff after you tie the game up out to their nearly 35-yard line gave them the thought that 3 or 4 first downs and they kick a field goal to win the game. Of course, they could have scored. And Baylor, something's missing there on kick coverage. And also, by the way, kicking into the end zone, which Rauschenberg does a lot. But there have been times, not sure if it's the weather, the turf, whatever it is, and he has been, or they have been hurt by it.
Or blocked extra points, or, I think the biggest loss in this team last year was probably Matthew Pallage.
Yeah.
Not Jalen Petrie, not Terrell Bernard, is Matthew Pallage, who coached safeties and special teams. And where are we seeing the most obvious glaring holes in this team? It's in the back end of coverage, and it's on special teams. They've lost 2 games in a row now because of special teams. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can dissect giving up this or giving up that. Special teams specifically has cost them 2 straight games because of massive miscues. Without that blocked extra point last night, I think Baylor wins by 3 scores. Mm-hmm. But it was just a massive flip of the game. So, yeah, they're ailing there in a major way.
Number 4, tackling. This is run defense all across the board, tackling the open field after pass plays. This was a team last year that pretty much when they hit you, you went down. There was a run, one of the touchdown runs last night. I think it might have been when it was 24-24. And again, it was a long night last night. But 2 different Baylor defenders threw their shoulders into the running back, and he ran through them both like he was going through a saloon door. Just
good point. That's a good way to
just
look at it.
Kicked him out, and was ready to get some sarsaparilla in him and have a big old time. But that was not what we saw from Baylor last year. When they hit you, you went down. They also used their arms and not their shoulders, and I was shocked to see a Dave Aranda defense tackling like they did last night.
I'll tell you this. I saw not only the shoulder tackle, which is trying to force somebody near the sideline, maybe out of bounds, but in the middle of the field, it almost could launch him even bigger into a run or whatever it might be. But I saw arm tackling, jumping at the feet. There were many times when West Virginia just, they weren't touched on a lot of occasions. And we've seen that maybe more than just the game against West Virginia.
Yeah, it was soft. I thought there's a real lack of physicality, and maybe I need to rewatch the game, but just simply because there was more physicality than I seem to have gleaned from it. But I can rewatch that game 10 times, and I'm not going to see better tackling. I know that for sure. So, yeah, it's a massive problem for them. And allowed, I don't know how much extra yardage last night, but had to have been like 200 yards. I mean, I would have to think after contact. I mean,
well, that's a big number, but it was a bunch. It was a bunch.
Obviously, being a bit hyperbolic here, but you get the gist of what I'm trying to say.
I agree.
There was a lot of extra yardage.
Yeah. All right, number 3, the pass rush.
What pass rush?
Lethal last year. I mean, in their opus, the Sugar Bowl, where they had 10 sacks in the game, or 9 sacks in the game. A really unbelievable performance in that game. You would have thought with some of the, especially the defensive linemen they had coming back and bringing in Jackson Player, that they would still be able to get after the passer. They're not. Now, one of the things that teams are doing, and Jack pointed this out to me earlier, I will give him credit again, is a lot of quick 3-step drops, 1 read, and the defensive backs are not knocking receivers off their route enough. They're not making the quarterback question that first read enough, so he's going really quick, so there's not much they can do. But in the longer dropbacks, they're still not getting there. When they have time to get there, when they would have been getting there, they're not getting there regardless of what's going on.
Yeah, I've read that too, and I've seen that talk. But I mean, JT Daniels was standing back there multiple times, just standing there. So it's like, I mean, I get that, and I do agree that some of that's on the secondary, but I don't know, man. Like, who were their big pass rushers last year, and where are they now? They're in the NFL.
Yeah.
So like, it's not like the guys that are here were big disruptive pass rushers last year. The guys that were are gone. So I don't know that they really ever replaced them. Now, yeah, it's some of what the offense is doing. It's some of what's going on in the secondary. But, I mean, just who's the disruptive guy on defense? It was supposed to be Matt Jones or someone like him. And I can't name a single player who's in the backfield.
Bryson Jackson, I thought, was going to be one of those two.
So maybe a couple times we've said his name, but for the most part, like, I mean, it felt like Bernard and Petrie were back there like every other play.
Yeah,
if anything, the quarterback had to move. But I'm not seeing that. So I think it's a combination of things, and you can't just blame the defensive line because, you know, they are playing, you know, better than they're probably given credit for, but I don't believe for one second that it's the secondary that's like the sole reason as to why they're not getting any kind of pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah. Number 2, health. Blake Shapen, concussion last night. Khalil Keith's been out for a long time, and it looks like maybe he's coming back, so that's good news. Tay McWilliams is still a little ways away. If you listen to Dave Aranda and what he said, he doesn't seem to – he's very non-committal on when they're going to see Tay McWilliams. Squirrel Williams hit his head last night, and we'll find out what that is, I'm sure, here soon. Richard Reese broke his nose last night. So they have all these different things going on. They need to be healthy if they want to make this run and stay in contention for the conference race, which even at 3-3, I know that the sky appears to be falling. They do have to win out to probably guarantee that, but it's there in front of them if they win games. But they've got to get healthy to do that, and nobody's going to sit around and wait for them to do that,
Last year when they lost the game in Fort Worth to TCU, I said, there goes the chance to play for a Big 12 title. I was wrong, but that was much deeper into the season than it was at Game 6 when you've only played 3 conference games.
Yeah, I have no faith in them being able to replicate that. I really don't. I mean, I do think this team is capable of going on a run, but I just don't see enough there to really rally around and buy into that at the moment. Like, I think talent-wise they can do that. I think – we saw last night they could have won that game. Like, we know that they're capable of winning games, but I'm not buying into them being able to put together a complete game time after time after time after time after time, over the next month and a half. I don't see it with this group. So, health would go a long way in that regard. I'd love to know, like, what the average is for concussions per team, because they seem like they've had – the Tay McWilliams, Blake Shapen, Squirrel Williams, and I don't even know who we're maybe missing as well, but concussions in particular have really dealt a blow.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. That was an alarm that I had going off. That's not good. And I'm not so sure that we haven't seen Jordan Jenkins, the running back out of Lindale, who's in his second year because of something like that even occurred possibly during the week or not leading up to the last game. But there's more of those. There's concussions that are a part of the game, and they're obviously trying to be careful with them.
They're going to need some running backs to get healthy because right now the only one that they can play last night was Quaylon Jones, and he was the 4th-string guy last year. He's the 4th-string guy again this year. That's who he is.
Saw a little bit of that Richard Reese, but you're right. Quaylon Jones is more of a guy that seems to be kind of clumpy and had there's a fumble that doesn't need to get overlooked.
That fumble was awful, man.
That was wrong. Well, the ball was in the left hand. The guy hits him on his elbow. It's a great job by West Virginia to force it, but for a big physical running back like that, you have to You have to protect the football.
And number one, the thing that they need to reboot is their identity, because this is not the team that's knocking you around along the lines like it was last year. This is not the team that owns the running game. Can they do things on offense? Yeah, we've seen them do that. They can't really do anything on defense right now, but this is not the team that they thought that they were going to be coming in, and you're at the halfway point now, so you don't have to be that team if that's not who you can be. Like, I think that's sometimes the mistake that teams make is they're convinced that, well, this is the way that we have to win. Well, one of the best things I think about the 7-6 Matt Rule team was that their identity was that whatever it's going to take to beat this particular team, we're going to do, because they knew they couldn't particularly do everything they wanted to do. They're kind of like Indiana Jones. Like, they walk into the thing, rocks start falling, you just hit the whip on something and swing around until you land on your feet. This team might need to do a little bit of that, where just try to find what works and shift to that.
How about just not giving the ball back? And how about fumbling when no one's around you?
I mean, I agree to an extent, but like I think their identity is pretty clear. They're an electric offense that can score some points, but they can't get stops to save their life. At least as of last night, and really against Oklahoma State as well, but especially last night. Yeah, I mean, I think that they kind of know who they are. I think some of the not knowing who they are, I think that's as much outside fan noise and media perhaps as anything. I think the team kind of knows their deal. I just don't think that they can execute very well.
No, the absolute thing is we do know who they are. Like Craig said, their offense is electric, which we thought was going to be the offense we would see with Blake Shapen when they made the decision at quarterback, and we saw that last night. We know their identity on defense is that they are incredibly overrated, based on what the expectations, not just by you, me, or whoever, by even the coaching staff. And it is obvious after what happened in West Virginia. All right.
I wanted to say something like Gavin Holmes, terrific game last night from that young man. I thought that Blake Shapen was terrific as well before he got hurt. I do think there are positives to glean from that. Special teams has to be corrected. Like, that has to change. The tackling has to change. They had like 3 or 4 picks last night they could have had, and just like either didn't look up quick enough, or just there's not a lot of natural instinct on this team, it feels like, in some ways.
That might be experience.
Right, and that's experience, and that's fine. That's a thought that came into my head, but there's some things that you can clean up and things that only come with time. They're not a terrible football team, even though it probably sounds that way after listening to this show. But that was an awful loss last night, and that's why it sounds the way that it does. We'll be back next week and talking about, the next game and all of that. Not saying the season's over, but that was an awful loss.
Well,
I mean,
Ricky
it really
Thompson was right there, and he said it. He played at Baylor, and he didn't sugarcoat it as well.
Congrats to West Virginia.
Tomorrow, Kansas at Oklahoma, Iowa State at Texas and Austin, and Oklahoma State plays at TCU. That game is a 2:30 game on ABC, so hopefully get a bunch of people. The Big 12 yesterday announced that the 14-game schedule for the 23-24 seasons will include Texas and Oklahoma, which means they're going to be around for the next couple of years, and they will try to make sure they get that figured out. We mentioned, Bob Berta told us, right, Wednesday.
Yeah.
In fact, that they should release it sometime pretty soon in November. For Garrett Ross, also for Jack McKenzie, Paul, Catalina, and Craig Smoke, and our sponsors and you who watch us and are here every day on 365 Sports, I'm David Smoke. Have a great weekend and good night.